I've been able to, Brian says it all the time, like you have to be coachable. He goes, it is one of the most rewarding things as a mentor to a mentee, to actually take the things that you teach and implement them.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another episode of Talking Lots. Man, I am excited for this one. This is something that I love. Love talking about sales with Mr. Todd Gorell. I've learned a lot from you, Todd. Really have.
You have. I've learned a lot from you as well, man.
I appreciate it.
I agree. This is like my favorite thing in the world to talk about is talking sales. And you and I talk so much about it. You know, we've been through like the hiring process. We've been through coaching salespeople and helping them close deals and the whole journey. So I think this was an awesome idea to get on and just talk a little bit about how we approach it and what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. How are you?
Dude, I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. Same, man. This is that time of year where we, and I don't even know when this podcast will come out, but everybody knows the podcast secrets, right? That they're not always shot like right and then go right up. So this might come out in April, who knows? But this time of year, it's December, it's just before Christmas, out in the Pittsburgh office and just reflecting on a tremendous 2023. Yeah. And Eli and I working on strategies with for our sales team to have a massive 2024. And so let's pick up a conversation. We got tons. I think this maybe becomes a series or something.
This will become a series. Yeah. I think we're going to have, different segments to talk about different things. I mean, there's so much when it comes to sales, right? You've got individual sales, right? You've got like what it takes to actually be a sales leader, what it takes to be a salesperson. Mm-hmm. You've got sales leadership, what it takes to actually, manage those people, manage the numbers, goal setting.
It'd be crazy.
There's a million. No, I'm kidding. There's a million things you could talk about, but I'll give the reins to you real quick. What do you want?
Well, you know what I thought made some sense is to continue our conversation you and I were having about so. If you look at a salesperson, right, mm-hmm. the first thing you need to do is decide, well, do I have the makeup to be in sales, right? Is it in my DNA to be successful in sales? And there's some things that we've learned over time and you read books and, talk to mm-hmm. smart people that have been doing this for a long time. And I think there's some things that are conclusive that need to be in your DNA, right? To just get into it, and I always start with grit. Mm-hmm. If you can figure that out from, what they've done in their lives, kind of the way they present themselves in an interview, mm-hmm. Asking a lot of those types of questions. But where would you rank grit for a salesperson? Let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta take, the answer no a lot, right? Like, and that takes a lot of grit. And along with that, sometimes, especially when you're getting started, it takes a lot of grit to keep going, like it takes a lot of work to get started.
Yeah.
A lot of salespeople, when they finally get, they get their book of business, like they're rolling, they've got, they're constantly evolving their book of business. They've got new customers, like it becomes a lot easier, right? And they can sometimes build out a team, but especially when you're first getting started, to go back to what we were just talking about, like mm-hmm. the grit part of it, like it takes a lot of that to get started. I don't know exactly where I'd rank it. It's fairly high up there, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Can it be taught? So it's like grit and resiliency.
Yeah.
For the reasons that you're saying, that you kind of get a lot of no's, right? And you got to not have your feelings hurt. You need to be able to get back up. The old Rocky saying, it's not how many times you get knocked down, how many times you get up.
You got to do the impression for it.
Yeah, it's not, I don't have that one in me. I can't do the Balboa. I could do a good Rambo though. No, I'm kidding.
Let's hear it.
No, I'm kidding. I can't really. But so so is it number one? I don't know which one of these is number one. But do you think grit and resiliency, is that the same thing to you?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's fairly close, right? Like, I don't know if it's the same exact thing.
But I guess what I should have said, can it be taught? Yeah.
I think it can be taught to some extent, definitely. I think part of it is just hardwired in your DNA. There are millions of different types of people, really,
sure.
Right? Like everyone's got a little something different. And for me, like I could not be an operational or a financial person for that matter.
How come?
Just because, for me, it's like, I don't enjoy, like, I used to schedule jobs at like the previous, well, really even at the pavement group, but like,
you were kind of doing everything.
I did a lot of stuff. And like, I was good at, the sourcing and I was good at scheduling too, but I really didn't enjoy it.
Okay.
I really, for me, it was, I don't want to say monotonous because it really wasn't. But it just wasn't enjoyable. Like it's the operational
It
side.
didn't get you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And especially at the self-performing company I worked at before the pavement group, I spent probably a good 4 or 5 months of just scheduling jobs. And that was very monotonous. It was a lot of paperwork and just like repetitive.
Okay.
And for me, like that just wasn't fun. It didn't get me out of bed.
I gotcha. So you think that's like a little bit of a DNA thing?
I think
you're
is.
born to be
really
a
is.
sales or an operation person.
I
like
think,
literally, you can break those two down, and
then
so much of the DNA is dissimilar. Yeah.
And I'm a very type B person too. Like I'm not very type A.
Okay.
If you were to look at my wife, she's very type A,
Mhm.
and she would be exceptional in operations. She
Okay.
would do so well.
Is that a nice way of saying she wouldn't be good at sales?
She wouldn't enjoy it.
Okay.
I think she would be good at
She'd
it.
probably be good at it.
She would be
because
good at
she'd
it.
figure it out, and she's super smart. Yeah.
She has a lot of
But she wouldn't enjoy
emotional intelligence. She knows how to read people. She knows how to connect well, which I think are all big pieces of leading this conversation.
Yeah,
more.
for sure.
But yeah, like my wife, I think she would be an exceptional operations person. I don't think she'd enjoy sales.
Okay.
You know?
That's some, like, before you got into sort of your career path here, do you think it was important to enjoy your job, or did you have a mindset? I'm just wondering, like, growing up, what your programming was like. Did you have a mindset that you just had to have a job and maybe you're not going to enjoy it? Like, what did you believe?
I definitely had a little bit of it where, I just had to have a job. And what's funny is I wanted to, for the longest time, I wanted to just make 70 grand a year and be good.
Okay.
Like that, like be all right,
Yeah.
Because
what did that mean? What did all right mean? Like just be left alone, or just not have worries?
Like not have worries, make 70 grand and kind of coast. And like that's growing up. That's what I thought was, I quickly realized that like, all right, like that's not what I want to do at all.
Yeah, sure.
Like I love this like growth that we're on. I love, leading people and working through issues and sometimes having a little stress and a little worries here and there. Like maybe not in the moment, but you look back and like, all right, that's where growth comes from. But yeah, growing up, that's really what I wanted to do was,
boy, I can't believe that.
Isn't it crazy?
I wouldn't have believed that. Yeah.
It was probably like halfway through high school that I realized that I'm like, all right, like I kind of want to do something more than,
sure.
More than just make.
But so much of it is environmental, right? It's that the parent-child tape that you learn not just from your parents, but from whatever your upbringing is in your school and your environment, right? That you're kind of programmed to believe something, and it's really, they say, by the time you're like 7 or 8 years old, that's pretty ingrained in you, right? So it's hard to sort of change. But so you realize you had a little grit, little resiliency.
I think
what else?
One of the big things that I think too is being self-motivated, self-driven.
Okay.
Right? Like.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a huge thing because as a salesperson, man, like you write your own paycheck.
You do.
Like you decide how much you want to make. Like, and that, all these other things go into it, the grit and like everything that we're going to talk about here. But being self-driven is huge. And I think, for me, like I am that way. I'm like, all right, like I can sit down. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. I don't really need a checklist. Right. And I think that's huge for a salesperson. What would you rate that high, being self-driven, self-motivated?
You have to be. Yeah. Like you said, you're kind of running your own business in most sales jobs, and that's too, I think, also where, you get that division of good hunters versus good farmers, which every company needs both, but those hunters are a little bit more self-motivated. They're a little bit more disciplined, probably a little more competitive as well. And so that model's a little different, right?
What would you consider yourself?
I'm definitely a hunter. Because I'm not a good detail-oriented person. I'm not. And like it gives me a headache to sit down and do proposals, and I've had to for years and years because that was part of the career. But what I enjoy the most, I love what I'm doing right now. And I was able to do that with my last company to a large degree too. Was get in, big meetings and big customers, and I love the chase, and I do really enjoy my existing customers as well and expanding those relationships. But it's never just enough for me, and I mean that in a good way. But not that they're not giving us enough or whatever, but it's never enough. I always want to take that relationship to the next level. I think that's part of the reason too why a lot of my customers that I've had. I was just on the phone this morning with a 15-year customer who's become way more of a friend to me that I've gone on vacations with, and I just love the guy. We talk a lot this time of year because things have slowed down, and that to me, like I reflect, I'm like, man, I was chasing this guy because he replaced somebody else. I won't get into the whole story, but he replaced someone else that I wanted to get in with, and I chased him for like a year. He came up to Massachusetts to look at a job. This is when I was with my last company. And I'm like, you got to let me take you out to lunch. And he finally was like, all right, grab a slice of pizza. I'll give you 20 minutes. And from there, now here we are talking about our kids. Yeah, I was invited to his kid's wedding. And I'm like, that beautiful journey is amazing to me. But I know what it takes to do that whole thing, you know? And it's not transactional by any means. So I didn't answer your question at all. I kind of went off on a tangent, and that's why I can't be a good farmer. That's really why. I think that was the example of it. The AD, exactly. Squirrel. No, but like that's what I love about it. That's really the hunting piece, you know. But some folks that are hunters are, and it depends on what business you're in too. Some businesses you're selling one thing to one person, and that's all they need, and then you're moving on. You know, you get into software, you're sort of implementing.
Do you think you could do that? Sell one thing to one person?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess I do. I don't think I'd be fulfilled doing it.
Me neither.
Yeah, you're a relationship person, right? Isn't that's kind of part of it? Well, I know you, and I mean, I'll let you say it, but I don't need to speak for you. But like, you love to see the mushroom, the growth,
I love
the build, right?
Oh, I love it.
Man. Why? What do you love about it?
When we get to when we have the opportunity to start working with somebody, right? You get one job with them. They're like, all right, you're another contractor. You're in there. You're doing the job, whatever.
Yeah.
And you build a relationship, you grab that slice of pizza with them.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, the job went really well. We executed. We did exactly what we said we were going to do. And they give you the next opportunity. Well, from there, you just continue to blossom it, continue to grow it, as you said, mushroom it.
Yeah.
And you get to see that, like, I just love watching the journey and love watching the relationship develop.
Yeah.
And solving their problems. Solving their high level problems. Like, sure, they might have one parking lot they need paved right now, but their greater problem right now is that they don't have a good contractor that they can rely on for all of their properties, right? For all their projects.
Right.
And right now that's hindering, time with their family, time with their kids, time outside of work, doing whatever else they like to do, going on hikes or whatever, right?
Sure.
Things that are precious to them. And, for me to be able to come in there and develop a relationship and truly develop a real relationship where I care about what they do and they care about me too. Like, to get handwritten cards from our customers is my absolute favorite thing in the entire world.
Yeah, your customers get invested right back into you because you're real.
Yes.
And I think something people wouldn't really guess about you, and I've got the same thing in me, they probably, because I think we're pretty chill guys, is we both wake up every morning scared to death to let them down. Like, it's a mission. It really is, to make sure that we don't let those people down, because our word means something. But you know how much work goes into building that relationship, right? And you like people. Like, once you build that relationship, you've done a lot of work together. You've been on this little journey together. So I think that's profound, man. What about coachable? Like, is that 100%? Because you get some salespeople that you might bring into an organization. We haven't had any here yet, but it'll happen as you grow. Not everybody's gonna be perfect. That someone's like, I got it. I don't really want to be coached. I'll put up the numbers and bother me at the end of the year if I didn't hit my number or whatever. Is that a problem? You think coachable is an important part of your sales DNA?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's aside from being self-motivated or self-driven, I think it's right up there, towards the top. Maybe not number one, but definitely up there.
Okay.
Maybe number 2 or 3. For me,
right.
I came into sales really, 4 years ago, not knowing anything. Like, I managed accounts, but it really wasn't sales. I figured out how to, develop relationships, and I've learned from Brian Hess, and I've learned a lot from you. And I've been able to, Brian says it all the time, like, you have to be coachable. He goes, it is one of the most rewarding things as a mentor to a mentee, to actually take the things that you teach and implement them. And I've had the pleasure of watching, Paige on her team.
Oh yeah.
She has taken she's one of the most coachable.
She's like a natural learner too. She's so incredible like that.
I mean, it makes sense, right? She has a doctorate.
She went to school for a while.
Physical therapy, right? Like, it makes sense that she's going to be a lifelong learner. But, for me to watch her take exactly what I've told her to do, I'm like, this is what I do, take it how you will. Like, it's, you don't have to do it the exact way, but here's how I would approach a situation. She takes it, she runs with it, she learns from it. And it's been one of the best things that I've been able to watch, and her numbers reflect it too.
Yeah.
And her conversations and the relationships she's
Oh,
developing.
yeah, absolutely.
And so that goes for anyone, right? Like, I think being coachable is one of the biggest things. And I think one of the big things that gets in the way of people is ego, you know?
Dude, I've seen it a million times, Eli.
That stops them from being coachable.
It does.
And
It could be one of two things too with the ego. It could be insecurity, or it could be genuine ego where like, no, I've done it successfully. And I'm cognizant of it because I started managing people, salespeople early in my career, and I made some bad hires. You know what I mean? Early 30s, and I was managing people. So I'm 51, right? Sales has changed a lot. The way that you acquire business has changed a lot, and I love the blocking and tackling and the fundamentals and the closing process of a deal. But how you get attention, so much of it has changed. And if I wasn't willing to be coached by Brian with the way that he's thinking about things, go out there and read a ton of books, really lean into the personal brand part of it, understanding the nexus of business development, marketing into the sales funnel, which is so different than it was, when I started in sales 20 years ago or whatever. It really is very different. If I wasn't coachable, man, I'd be in trouble. And I've seen a lot of people that aren't, that are just like, I got it. And it's usually they get to be, around my age, let's say. Not usually, it could be other things, but this is what I've seen. So pro tip coming your way. Be coachable, because you think you've had success, or you have had success, but you think that that's enough. And the world's moving fast, man. It really is, and there's just different ways of doing things. That wasn't always the case in sales. I'd say from, I don't know, whenever sales started in the 1800s to about 15 years ago, it's pretty much the same. You had innovators to some degree, Brian Tracy and Jim Rome and Zig Ziglar. And those things were like kind of the Bible for sales. Like you didn't veer much off of that, but it's so different now because you can get so much attention up front, and that merge of marketing and the merge of biz dev and branding that helps a salesperson. If you don't want to learn that, you're going to be in trouble. It's going to hurt. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And another way to put it is just, be a lifelong learner. Like that's the biggest thing. Just constantly, reading books and learning and reaching out to, people who you would like to be your mentor. And when they do say yes, actually take like that. This is the biggest thing. Actually take the things that they teach you and apply them.
Absolutely.
Like don't just hear it, listen and apply it.
Yeah.
Listen
absolutely.
and apply it. Like biggest thing.
No, greatest tip I got. Another one coming in. I've shared this with you before, but there was this gentleman that mentored me, and he had a really big job with Gillette. I think he ran Canada for Gillette razors. And he was a really sweet guy. And I met him, like my mid 30s, something like that, when I was kind of starting out, or maybe late 30s, doesn't really matter. But he traveled his whole career. And the best advice, I never forget, he's like, we were out to dinner one night, and he said, listen, you're going to come home from traveling. We were just starting our national division at T&K. He said, you're going to come home from traveling on Friday, and you will have been out to dinner, and, dinner's all week and the game and all that. You're just going to want to put on your slippers and sit on the couch and have a tuna sandwich. And he said, your wife's going to come downstairs in a dress and want to go out to dinner. He goes, you go get dressed. You go out to dinner every time, because she's been home dealing with the kids, even though you're doing all this sort of stuff. And that is something that changed the way I sort of looked at my whole career, because I ended up, I'm on 80 planes a year, and you kind of lose touch a little bit at home and stuff. So little things like that. Again, I've taken a massive left turn, but what you said about mentorship and putting things in place, like that was a little thing. And it might have even been a throwaway thing for him to tell me, but I think about it weekly still, that I'm going home and making sure like I'm not just putting my feet on the couch and eating a tuna sandwich. Although now my kids are older, and my wife doesn't want me to go out to dinner with her. She's like, just have a tuna sandwich. But
it's important, because your home life does affect, your work life.
Yeah.
And, as much as people, try to separate it sometimes or whatever, like I'm a firm believer in like the two can be together. Like Angel's as much of as involved in this place as I am.
Oh, I know.
To some extent, right? Like, and
cultural employee, I think Jay Duran would call that. Right? Yeah.
100%. And she supports everything that I do. And so, if I were to be an individual salesperson, it's like, man, like if there's been times where my wife, a big customer calls and says, hey, can you go out and look at this property? And I asked Angel, I'm like, hey, can you mind if we go out this weekend and drive 7 hours to go look at this property for this customer? She's like, absolutely. Like, let's make a little road trip out of it. So
Yeah,
we
sure.
did, right? We did earlier this year. We made it happen. We looked at the property. Customers now turned into a big one for
Yeah.
us. And
I remember, what was that, Louisville?
Louisville.
You guys went to Louisville.
Yep.
Yeah.
We went to Louisville.
Boy, that's a great point, man. Because a sales job can be up and down.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm making $100,000 this year and next year, and that, like, it's kind of this. So you have to have a spouse. And my wife has been amazing about, like, sort of how much she does with the kids and at home while we were, again, they're older now, but while we were raising them, understanding that, and then understanding the economic volatility that comes with being a salesperson too. That's a great point, man.
Yeah. You have to have someone who's there.
Be the partner on board.
For me, yeah. My wife's my partner, and she is like super supportive of everything. And she tells me if I'm like getting out of line or something, right? But
No, for sure.
but at the end of the day, she's super supportive. And if we got to drop something to go make something happen, as long as it's reasonable, right?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
All right. So I was thinking that we've got like 3 chunks that we wanted to cover about salespeople. And the first piece was going to be what's in you, what's in your DNA. Do you have what it takes? And then we're going to talk about it. Can you tell the story? Can you become that salesperson that can really sell and present and pitch and all that? And then the last piece about closing. But I feel like just this, what's in your DNA, because we're running out of time here, is going to be another episode. Like, I think we can talk about what makes up a good salesperson.
We could probably make this 10 episodes.
We probably could, because there is so much to it. But I think it's great to share. Because we've been through, we've hired people, we've had to learn, we've read a lot, so it's good stuff to share. But I think I'd like to pick off one more before we wrap up this episode, and that is controls emotions, being in control of your emotions. Right? My mentor, who I talk about a lot, Kevin, used to say, he who loses his emotions loses. Like, you lose the deal if the person that you're trying to sell or whatever, purchase from, gets emotional. You win, right? Or you lose.
You have to be level-headed. It's funny. So I'm very level-headed, for the most part. Like, I don't, like, there's not a whole lot that, gets me flustered.
Yeah.
I've had people throughout, this is before I even really went to, I think this is when I was in high school. I had people tell me like, hey, you should go become a paramedic. I'm like, oh, why? Like, well, because in very high stress situations, you seem very
calm.
Like, oh, that makes sense. And now, like, looking back, I've been through stressful situations, and there's times where I do get flustered. It's just, it takes a lot to make that happen.
Sure.
Looking back, I'm like, yeah, that actually makes sense. Like, and so for me, it's just part of my DNA. Like, that's just how I was born, right?
Okay.
But yeah, you have to be level-headed. Do you think that's something that people can learn?
I think you can. Yeah, I think you can learn to be, emotionally intelligent. That's really what that is. That's kind of, that's like a buzz phrase out there, but the book's great.
There's a book, yeah.
Yeah, the emotional intelligence book, and that test will tell you what you need to work on. I think through self-discovery, when you realize what your sort of hot button things are, you can start to calm it down. So yeah, I think you definitely can learn how to control it. And you got to take importance out of certain things too. And then you start to build it, like, boy, that felt like, well, that was terrible. He said this, and I think I lost the deal or whatever. Get rid of a lot of that head trash, and start to understand that when you're in a selling situation, that person is trying. It's a competition, right? It's a little bit of a chess game. They're trying to protect the financial interest of their company, or maybe another contract, or whatever it is. So there's a reason for why they're doing what they're doing. And when you start to really understand those reasons and understand the psychographic of your customers better, the emotions start to dissipate as well, I think. Because again, you realize none of it's personal, right? None of this is personal, it's business. Early on, I was so obsessed with whether people liked me or not. I had such a high need for approval, and then things would start spinning out of control in a sales situation, and emotionally, I wouldn't react well. I'm not a fly off the handle guy, but I might send an extra email where I'm just annoying the customer, or just, So there's a lot of that. Also, agreed direction, I think, takes a lot, and being good at asking questions. That's something we talk about a lot. Takes a lot of emotion out of it. If you know where it's going next, and you have hey, all right, let's talk 10 o'clock on Tuesday. This is what we're going to talk about. Hopefully you'll have answers to this, and this. 90% of the time they get on the call and they have the answers. And if they don't, but if you just let wing things, you just send a proposal, you're like, let's go. You
Let's
know, I
hope
hope
we get it.
let's hope. Hope's not a strategy. Let's hope we get it. That's where you just start creating all this sort of stuff. Maybe the guy got fired. Oh, maybe he hates me. Maybe his brother owns a paving company. I don't know. You don't know, but that's emotion, right? That's the blood rushing to the brain and again, creating all that head trash. So I think we should talk more on emotion on the next episode as well,
100%.
because it's such a big thing. And again, you and I both were calm people, because I get the same thing where people were like, this, like when I first started working here, we had a customer that I brought on, one of my customers, and everything that could go wrong went wrong.
I remember this well.
Yeah, and Trish is like, "Are you dead? Why aren't you freaking out?" I'm like,
I was the project coordinator on this.
yeah, and I'm like, I don't know, what's freaking out gonna do? That's just sort of my mindset. I stay calm and cool, but I'm inside. It's churning, and I'm gonna make sure, with urgency that we get things fixed. But it does. Just because you present yourself as not emotional doesn't mean that you don't operate on emotion a lot. So we should talk about that. How
next episode.
On the next episode, on a very special Talking Lots
with Todd Gorell.
Man.
And E12.
All good. Well, thank you for having me on. I love you hosting.
Thank you for having me on.
I think this is what we'll do a lot this year too, right? With Talking Lots is, we had some great episodes this year. You're here in Pittsburgh, can pop into the studio. You can grab great guests, and you become really good at hosting this too. So I love the fact that we can kind of tag team this. When we get Tony in, Tony can come on. He was so busy this year, we couldn't get him on, or he couldn't come on a lot. You know what I mean? But the triumvirate of hosts here.
We've got some funny episodes coming.
For sure.
We've got some, episodes about the trade shows, and we're going to be interviewing some people there, I'm sure. We've got more sales tactics. We've got more stories from our sales team, get to know our team. So there's a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline here with this show. This is exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hosting it, brother.
Of course. Do you want to do the outro?
I'm terrible at outros, but I'll give it a try.
Go for it.
I'll give it a try. Thank you for joining us on Talking Lots again. My man Eli talking about our favorite thing is sales. And so we're going to keep diving into this and have a bit of a series here on Talking Lots. But we're over on the One Team Media channel, which was the Brian Hess channel. Same deal. All the shows are over there. So much good content coming out. And 2024, baby, we're just going to hit another level with all these shows and all the content. And as a company, we're excited. So thanks again for watching Talking Lots. We'll see you next time.